Good evening, Sharks fans, and welcome to another thrilling, exciting edition of Pucknology After Dark. Thrilling and exciting, probably something you wouldn't be needing to describe the Sharks' 5-2 loss to the lowly New Jersey Devils. I am Eric Kura, Puck Guy 14, alongside Chris JWS, and I guess that's AJ, and I take a wild guess at where he had dinner tonight.
Not at the Shark Tank.
Oh, AJ, come on, it's not that bad. I mean, at least we're not the Leafs right now. Thank you, that's better. So, guys, it was another come from ahead loss. 5-2 to New Jersey, who did the 3 California team trip and had fairly good success. New Jersey is 8th in the wild card chase. They're 12 points out, and we see an effort like this. I'll go around the horn, and I'll start off since I see AJ's face. I'll let you start it off, AJ. Go for
Mm. Started off so good. It seemed like they came out pretty good, some decent energy. I said Pavs would get the first one tonight. He did, which was nice. But then all of a sudden the defense went MIA. It was all of a sudden I was like, Jesus Christ, the Sharks are, do they think they're playing football with 5 minutes left and they're in Seattle? I mean, it was just awful, awful, awful.
it.
I mean, all you had to do was look at Twitter and see some of the comments. It was just a rousing case of why are Hannon and Irwin on this team right now? Like, why was Tennyson scratched tonight? Why are we still waiting for Mueller to come back? I mean, is he injured? What's going on with that? Couture and Hurdle go 1 for 8 in the circle tonight. And then for that, when it was 3-2, it was kind of like, okay, that's all right. We've been playing behind a lot lately for some godforsaken reason. But for me, it was seeing Havlat take away and pile on the puck from Hannon on the sideboards, leading to New Jersey's 4th goal. And at that point, my mood went right down the pooper. It started with the Dylan giveaway, where Braun was caught watching, and then the Havlat takeaway from Hannon, and then to pile on, seeing Burns serve a penalty by the glass. The glass was the one who committed the penalty, but Braun served it. Or I'm sorry, Burns. I got Braun on the brain just because it was so awful. Either way, it was a nightmare. And if you think this is bad, can you imagine what it could be like? Versus LA on Wednesday, but the Sharks are Jekyll and Hyde. They could come out and destroy LA, which they've kind of done this season. I don't get it. Chris, your thoughts?
Where to start. There was, I guess, 3 big areas I saw that were just unbelievably bad tonight. That one being the defense, like I said, Hannon and Irwin. That pairing on defense is a tire fire. Almost every time we saw a dangerous rush, you could bet it was 27 and 52 right there. But even then, though, like with the effort in front of them just didn't seem to be there either. Because I remember they're saying it when after the first period, face-offs were 38% for the Sharks. I looked it up. On face-offs, New Jersey is one of the worst in the league. Sharks are number 8 right now in the league. What's going on there? Couture goes 0 for 6. I think you alluded to Hurdle also struggling. Only the 2 Joes, who were playing on the same line, were over 50% tonight, which is pretty terrible. And then that leads into shots. Early on, towards the end, the Sharks ended up out attempting them and out shooting them as well. But early on, shots were something like 16-6 at one point. And New Jersey was just taking it to them early, and they were not getting any shots, and that's probably partially because of the failure on the draws. But I looked up the numbers. San Jose is near the top right now in shots per game. New Jersey is the second worst. They are number 29 with 24.9 shots per game. And yet somehow they were shooting early and often and much better than the Sharks. So take that for what you will.
It's pretty scary to think of what occurred, and it started off pretty well, even though San Jose was getting outshot. Would you say, and I'll throw this out to you guys in a two-part question. One, would you say it was partly they were looking ahead to Wednesday night, how big that game is, and two, could have been some rust with Alex Stalock?
I don't know that they were caught looking ahead. They can. I don't feel like they can afford to do that by any stretch. Stalock, I don't know if I'd call it so much rust, although you do bring up a great point in that, when is Stalock going to see a little bit of consistent time? Mm-hmm. You can't expect a guy to come in. I understand that that's the role of the backup, but you can't expect a guy where it feels like he gets the start tonight, so when's the next one? Maybe
right.
he sees one more game before
sometime in April. I think.
Exactly.
Sometime in April.
So it's just kind of like, you know what? You saw what happened when you had a bad defensive front, if you can even call it that. But you saw what happened with a bad defense. Let's challenge the team, challenge them to come out and ride Stalock for at least one more game, and at least try to see more of what you're going to get out of this guy. Isn't he supposed to be the next guy? I mean, it's kind of like with when Shields, when we had Shields, and then Shields went down through injury, and you got to see an extended look at Nabby, and he ended up taking the job. I'm not rooting for a Niemi injury, but I would like to see Stalock get an extended look and let the Sharks decide, what are we going to do? Nemo's a UFA at the end of this season. Are you going to try to get something for him? Or are you going to at least give Stalock a look so you can make an educated decision in the off season? If you don't move Nemo before the deadline, at least you'll be able to make an educated decision. And we already have seen, in the small sample size that we love so much, but Grosnick looked that he is very serviceable, minimum in a backup role. So, make a decision with Niemi. I think. Like we said, the deadline's coming up in a month and a half. Either make a decision with the guy or make a move. I mean, especially if the season is, we're right there. We keep bouncing in and out of a playoff spot. Decide what this team is going to be.
Right, and to touch on that, within the playoff spot, yes, it is mid to late January, but we have to start talking about playoff races. And speaking of, Calgary just beat LA in overtime 2-1.
But another 3-point game, which we didn't need.
Exactly. I mean, that's the catch with that. Calgary keeps at the second wild card. LA is technically out right now at 52 points. San Jose is at 54, so that gives you what Wednesday night will be. The winner of that game will be in a playoff spot as they go into the All-Star break. I'm not going to say that you're hoping that the Sharks lose, but it would be an interesting feeling to let this team sit on essentially a week off of them being on the outside looking in, going into some time off.
Well, right now we have about 3 points separating Los Angeles and Vancouver. We've all played roughly the same amount of games. We played the most at 47. Vancouver's played 44.
Right.
But we have a very small difference in total games played. Vancouver has an edge there because they have the most points yet. But it's hard to say. I mean, even if we go into the break here with a couple losses, we're still very much in the thick of it. I mean, the only team that's really running away with things here is Anaheim, and then Arizona and Edmonton are pretty irrelevant right now. Arizona is 15 points back of Los Angeles, and then Edmonton is, well, Edmonton doing their usual thing down there at the bottom of the pile. I honestly don't. I don't think the Sharks were looking too far forward this game, like to LA. I think they were doing the thing that we've known them to do this season, time and time and time again. Like, I look at the standings here. New Jersey, 7th place in the Metropolitan Division. I see them there in 7th place. Once again, the Sharks play down to the level of a team that's down in the bottom of the standings. I mean, I look down there in the bottom of the standings as well. I see they got Carolina sitting right near them. I see they got Columbus sitting right near them. Similarly, in the other division that NBC doesn't care about in the East, I see Buffalo, Ottawa, Toronto. All that they did beat Toronto, Florida. So are we seeing a pattern with those teams I was naming off there for the most part? I seem to remember more losses than wins against those teams. So it just seems to be the repeated pattern of if a team, especially if the team's from the East, they play down to their level and even less. And it probably doesn't help matters that they have the Kings coming in on Wednesday.
Right. Hold that thought, AJ. I just want to mention to those who are actually watching us live, thank you. We appreciate it. Go ahead and use the hashtag Pucknology After Dark. I know it's a little long, but bear with us. But I have one thing since we were talking about the goaltenders. This is from CapsGirl_07. What is your opinion on possibly getting different goalies next season? Honestly, they need to take turns by playing every other game. From there, I think we should be good. Neither one has been on a major hot streak in the last few games. Why not alternate back and forth?
You're talking between Nemo and Stalock, or
yeah, Nemo and Stalock.
I don't know why you wouldn't alternate, other than it's a case of play the money guy, or
Todd McLellan has shown the tendency to rely on the veteran to an excess. He plays the safest hand possible, which I do understand his philosophy to an extent, but I think, when you're seeing where the Sharks are right now, maybe it is time to, take some chances, I guess. To quote the famous Bill Romanowski, they like bacon. If you ever saw that rant, the Raiders when you talk about it, the Raiders like to play it safe at the time. So, yeah, I think Todd McLellan likes to play it safe.
It's bacon! I'm sorry.
Look, if you haven't seen that rant, look it up. Bill Romanowski's bacon rant. That was fantastic.
No, I'm good, but okay.
Oh, no, trust me. It is well worth it. Romanowski's a nut job, but is well worth looking up.
Honestly, I feel decisions need to be made. I don't know about you guys. I feel like this entire season has been in limbo, and it started with coming into camp, coming out of camp with no captain and no identity, and seemingly no vision, no roadmap, so to speak. I mean, it's been a lot of double talk. It's been, we're going to go with the using the dreaded rebuild word, and we're a tomorrow team, and there's a youth movement or whatever. And then you're keeping guys like Hannon, and like, why are you keeping Hannon when you have Mueller? And honestly, who would you rather have at this point, Hannon or Irwin? Well, neither one, but at least Irwin is younger and a little faster and a little more offensive upside. I'd rather have Larry Robinson working with an Irwin rather than a Hannon. And not to mention, why have we gone over half a season now and never seen Fadoon come in? What is it going to take to see, for them to live up to their words? Like I said, this season has been in limbo from day one, and it's at this point I feel like, cut bait, figure out what you want to do. Are you going to be sellers? Are you going to be buyers? instead of just sitting here waiting and waiting and waiting. It's almost, to me, I almost feel like Wilson is waiting for this team to go into a skid and just kind of write it off, and then you start seeing some guys move. That's, we have 6 UFAs, right? We've got it's Hannon, Irwin, Desi, Nemo, Kennedy, and Shepard. And do I think Hannon's going to be here next season? No fucking way. Do I think Kennedy's going to be here next season? Probably not, unless it's at a significant discount.
Maybe.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think, honestly, maybe they just
he's been making a case recently.
He has been, yeah. He's having the contract season, as they call it, or at least he's attempting to. Shepard was on a hot streak for a little while. He's significantly cooled off. I mean, you look at that list of those 6 UFAs. Who would you put at the top of your list? I mean, for me, it would be Desjardins at this point. But
yeah. Or if they only sign one, even Niemi, but I mean, it just depends on if they want to make a decision with the whole thing. But honestly, Kennedy, Shepard, Irwin, Hannon can all go. Whatever. I don't care.
I still feel that the Sharks blew a significant opportunity in not trading Niemi last season. That, I think, was huge, because now he's going to be looked at as a rental. And you can say, well, Winnipeg needs a goalie. Philadelphia is clearly in need of support in net. I mean, there are dance partners to be had, but it's the whole idea of now you're getting a rental. What are you going to get for it? It's insane right now, but I'm sorry, I rambled. Getting back to the point, it's the team has been in limbo all season, and I just don't see it coming out of limbo until they miss the playoffs, and which is still my bet.
And you make a great point, AJ, is they're still in limbo. When we were going through this back in September, when we were testing out for doing this show, but one of the things, as I said, was you wonder if they're going to hold off on any moves until after the outdoor game, because after the outdoor game there's less than 2 weeks before the trade deadline. Yes, it'd be very ticky-tacky for them to do such a thing, but I'm sure the league has also been saying, we can't sell this game for ratings and tickets if you're going to have Troy Grosnick and Barclay Goodrow be, some of the support staff that you're going to want us to promote. You're going to need the Thorntons, the Marlows, the Niemis. Sure, they may not be in your commercials, but they're the ones that are your mainstays to keep you, from being in the ranks with Edmonton and Arizona right now. A number of tweets were asking us, essentially, and our good friend Gentry, thanks for inviting me to the game, by the way. When
glad I missed it.
Right? You know me, I don't care if it's 5-2, 2-1, 10-8. Can we just get rid of Hannon and let Tennyson take his spot?
Yes, please.
We would more than likely to if we were the GMs of this team. They did talk about youth, but the point here, I'm going to throw it out to you guys, is there must not be enough defensive talent in the Sharks system that is getting to be developed for them not to move Hannon.
Given past history, I mean, that seemed like a pretty solid assumption because, as we discussed a few times before, our history of drafting defensemen is pretty weak. But like you said, I'd love to see Fedun, but I don't understand why Tennyson is not in over Hannon. Well, I understand again because Todd McClellan, all things equal, he goes to the veteran one time and time again. But I tend to think, though, we do have a pretty thin system in terms of defensive talent. Like, we seem to have some guys that may turn into a 4 through 6 defenseman, but I'm not seeing any guys like, yeah, that's our future number 1, number 2, number 3 guy, at least right now, the way I see it. And and I'm only talking a couple of years in the system. Like, I don't know enough off the top of my head to talk about the system, 4 years out even. Guys who are a pretty long ways away, but you talk about just the guys we know, Doherty, what's his name, face puncher that always came up and didn't do a whole lot, and I think he's now a free agent.
Trekkie?
Petrecki, yes.
Oh, they let Petrecki go finally.
Yeah, that was after this season.
But yeah, I mean that's our illustrious history there. Just a couple guys that exemplify that.
Right.
So
and somebody, we got Drew on the Google chat asking, even if they do make the playoffs, is it going to be a quick exit anyway? And I would say abso-freaking-lutely. I mean, I think it'll be in 5 games because who are you going to get in the first round? Chances are it's going to be Anaheim, and they're killing it right now.
Depends on the matchup, and like I said,
Exactly.
It could be Anaheim though. But honestly, against Anaheim, I would not be okay. I could see Anaheim beating them, but I don't think it would be in 5. I think I think they would either fall flat on their face and be out in 5, or they'd give Anaheim a tough series maybe and take it, because it's the Kings I don't think they would beat in a first round series.
No. I'm just saying that
Anaheim, I think they seem to have a history with them recently where they can, even if Anaheim's playing great and the Sharks are playing poorly, the Sharks can still take them. They just seem to match up well like that.
I'll give you that.
Yeah.
I'll give you that, but I don't know. It just, January is a different beast than April, and for me, like I said, my money is still on the Sharks missing the playoffs. I'm still sticking by that. However, if they were to get in, I think it would be as a wild card, and chances are they would face, a top team. If it was, say, St. Louis, they're done. I wouldn't be surprised if they got swept. But I'm thinking if they make the playoffs, like I was pointing out, I think it'll be it as a wild card, and it would be it'd be an early exit to St. Louis or Anaheim or something. But I don't think there's no way they get past the first round. And then that leads to a further question: what will it take for sorry, I was distracted for a moment. What will it take for Wilson to finally detonate this group? Like, does it have to be missing one and doing another one round and done again? Does it have to be missing the playoffs altogether, or is it a case of it's one and done, they miss the playoffs, and they scapegoat McClellan rather than saying, you know what? Being honest with themselves and looking at this defense and saying nobody can do it. When they always keep pointing to Niemi, well, he's got the hardware, he's got a cup, and it's like, well, yeah, assholes. You know what the Sharks don't have? Duncan Keith and Seabrook and Bufflin and Hammer. I mean, come on, give me a break.
There's a reason why we went after Hjalmarsson in the first place,
right?
And tipped their card to eventually getting Niemi instead. You're absolutely right on that. Niemi had a strong defense in front of him when they won the Cup. And, yeah, you're going to talk about that, about all that Stanley Cup winning, blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's 4 years ago. That's 4 years ago, and the last time this was in the conference final was 2011, and it barely got there.
I just hate the whole expression, blah, 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 he's good because he won a cup. They use that with Adam Burrish. He knows what it takes. He's won a cup.
And Tyler Kennedy.
Yeah, exactly. That whole he's won a cup thing. Like I would say Niemi had a lot more to do with the cup win that they had than either of those two clowns. But like you said, he had a amazing defense in front of him. He had an amazing forward core, and the two combined were the best possession team. Period. They were just incredible. So like he was, he was not facing that many shots. He was, facing, he did his part here and there. Like I remember he stonewalled the Sharks in that series.
Mm-hmm.
But he had his moments. But I think when you ask like what will it take for Doug Wilson to blow this group up, it depends partially on what you mean by blow it up. Whether if you mean ship out like Thornton and Marlowe,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see a couple more losses here leading up to the trade, or like let's say between now and the trade deadline. I don't know how many games. I'm just gonna let's say 10. Apply the percentages, per that. But if they lose like 80% of their games, unlikely. Okay, let's say they're sub 500 by several games, and kind of take themselves down to the bottom of that 4-team mess right there, where there's 4 teams vying for 2 spots. I think we could easily see Thornton or Marlowe moved at the deadline. Like I think
if they're willing to go.
Yeah, that is part of it, but I think like the team that would want them would be someone who's in contention, someone who thinks they're really close. They maybe need that one forward to solidify their lineup and kind of go from being we're in the playoffs to we can make noise in the playoffs. Because I think they either those or both of those could easily play that role on a talented team. If you put them into a lineup that's missing like Thornton, for instance, you have a lineup that's he is 1 center short of being very good. There you go. I mean, I don't know who that's going to be. That'll depend on how standings shake out and everything from now on out. But I think if we see a lot of losses from the trade deadline, I wouldn't be surprised to see one of them moved. If you mean completely blow it up and go full Edmonton, they've said before they can't afford to do that. And we were to see an attendance slip when they're not even really having they're having a mediocre season by our standards, but they're having, much better than Edmonton, a lot of teams would, and they're already struggling to sell out. So I don't think they can afford to really do a full blow up, just say see ya to a bunch of people and go full out youth movement.
Yeah, they can't afford to do that. Unfortunately, because of that, I kind of look at it because of that Miracle '94 run, which was the first year in San Jose. You can't afford to blow up everything and do it. The fans in Edmonton, you praise them. Kudos for sticking by the team with some of the best talent that was out there at the drafts. But if you were to trade Thornton or Marlowe, or both, and for some reason they have a change of heart and say, yeah, trade me right now, you're essentially saying we give up, we're not going to make the playoffs. You also go against what Doug Wilson said in the summertime on Comcast, where, this is a tomorrow team, but at the same time we're going to be rebuilding on the run or on the fly. That's unfortunately kind of how he has to do it, because that's how the business side of the Sharks is. They can't afford it.
Well, yeah, and I'm okay with that. I don't think we need to implode and go full Edmonton at this point, because the cupboard's not bare in terms of young talent, as we've seen. Just listing off, Couture, Hurdle, Nieto, Vlasic. We have a lot of young, really talented guys. So we definitely have something there. So there's no reason to go just completely fire sell everything. So Crispy Churro actually Crispy Churro with a 0. we all love that name, and apparently we're not the only ones. But if you're Doug Wilson, who would you trade for? Forward, defense, goalie, more draft picks? Give my answer real quick. And actually, I want a churro right now.
Doesn't that sound so good?
Yes, it really does.
Has the best churros right now. Sorry, go ahead.
So I'm thinking if they can get it, they need defense. Like we saw it tonight, just how poor our defense is.
No, it's porous. There is no other way to answer that question. It is. I mean, when you say what would you trade for right now, forward, defense, goalie, or draft picks? Well, they've clearly shown that they don't know how to draft defensemen in the early rounds. They're fine. They've been fine at forward for quite a while. And look at the goal. I mean, they were a goalie factory for a while. I mean, Toskala, Kiprasov, Nabby, and then even now, I love what I see for the most part from Stalock and Grosnick. And no, the answer clearly is You need to go out and get a guy and pay the money for a proven defenseman. You're not going to get Doughty, Doughty. You're not going to get Doughty. You're not going to get Subban. But you know what? Find the next one. If you have all these stockpiled draft picks, I wouldn't have a problem if there was some stud that was some just uber studly kid that's coming up in the draft that everybody was saying, oh, this kid is going to be, the next Pronger or the next Subban or the defenseman that you can build your team around. May move a couple picks to trade up and get that guy, whatever it takes. Although, seeing the way the Sharks are going, they might not have to trade up to get the guy because they might have a top 8 pick or something. But at this point, that's what you make the trade for. But I do appreciate the segue because guess what it's time for, boys and girls? It's time to take it to the tweets, to borrow a phrase. So. Okay.
Do we have music for this? Do we need some?
No, you know what? The production value went out the window tonight. I didn't have time to prepare. Holy crap! Is that annoying?
Yeah, that's really annoying.
Yeah. Well, I was just trying to emulate typing.
We just lost 3 people watching. I'm just kidding.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
So, the first question on the Twitter machine. Big Deal and Teal is asking, and I can't wait to hear Chris's response. Why do we still have Hannon?
Something about orange traffic cones. Something more. But I don't know. I get no. I'll pass. I don't even want to go. I was wearing tirade last post game.
You go with the safe answer. Defensive depth.
No, veteran defenseman. Wait, has he won it? No, he has not won a cup.
Veteran depth.
Veteran depth.
Which makes you wonder why he stuck with Hannon and didn't jettison Hannon and keep Stewart, since Stewart does have hardware.
Thank you.
Honestly, I'm kind of glad he did do that because Hannon, I feel, is ever so slightly better. But honestly, at this point, we're picking between crap and diarrhea. They're both terrible.
All right. Well, that takes us into our next question.
Right.
Kind of piggybacking on this from Eric Landy, he says, when will Wilson ever trade Irwin and or Hannon?
Trade for what? Although, I mean,
exactly.
he did turn Douglas Murray into 2 second-round draft picks, or it eventually became something else, I think, because of how things worked out. But still,
a second-round pick plus
2 second-round draft picks, which is pretty amazing. So if you get that for him, I'd imagine maybe you get something for one of those 2. I mean, you turned Brad Stewart into something, so I don't know.
Doug has made some unbelievable trades and pulled them out, and we're like, wait, what?
But he's also made some bonehead moves, McGinnon, Winnick, and Gagliardi.
Oh, absolutely. So he's got to work on that. I have one. This is from Sharks Jen. Do you know any good satanic verses or voodoo spells that will get Dan Boyle back so we can have a defense again?
Oh, we're gonna have to save that for another segment. No, go
ahead. Unfortunately, Jen, we do not. If we did, we would have used it to win the cup by now. Keep going. King Shark 49, our good friend Daryl. Glad to see you're on watching us tonight. If any of you were the Sharks owner or CEO, who would you blow out? Doug Wilson as GM. I'm guessing who would we replace? DW? Great question. The wishful thinking would be Ken Holland if we could ever grab him from Detroit, but that will never happen. I don't know who you would possibly go with.
I'm going to go with the cop-out answer here in a way. I would actually have to probably spend some time researching this question to give a good answer, but I would say, any given position in almost every sport, you always know who kind of the big up-and-comers are.
Right.
Like when the Niners hired Harbaugh, everyone knew he was the big up-and-comer. He was kind of the next guy that was looking. So I'm sure if I spent some time actually looking into this question, there's most likely a few guys out there that are thought of as the forward-thinking assistant GMs. Look at who's hot out there. Look at why they're hot, whether it's because their franchise is successful or because their methodology installed. Go through that and figure out what's out there. And I would say try and go after I would say I wouldn't say chase the next big thing, but look for the guy who looks like he's gonna be the next forward-thinking GM to kind of take we live in Silicon Valley. We're forward-thinking. We should be get a
we use those
forward-thinking
SAP
GM.
analytics.
Exactly, those SAP analytics. Hey, Yasso.
Well, another question that I personally love was, if it was piggybacking on what we were talking about earlier, but it's if any of us, me, Eric, Chris, whether Sharks owner and or CEO, would you fire Wilson after this season? He doesn't quantify it, but what would it take for Hasso to get rid of Wilson? Would it be another one and done? Would it be missing the playoffs? What would it take? Or is it a case of, I know that it keeps on being, I guess, promoted or whatnot, that Hasso is a big hockey fan or whatnot. To me, he comes off like an absentee landlord. Like, it's basically, he knows Wilson. He knows Wilson's history. He's read his resume, and it's kind of dance with the devil, and here's a guy that has a solid track record. His team has gone to the playoffs every year under his watch. Why bother making a change? Because to him that is considered success. Butts are in the seats. However, this is the first time that we're seeing over that time that it's a case of, well, you know what? The butts aren't in the seats like they used to be. They are not selling out. And like I said, we'd have to look it up, but I know we discussed this in an earlier episode, show, whatever you want to call this goofy mess. But I know we've discussed it that have there been more non-sellouts than there have been sellouts this season? And right now, I think there have been more non. They did announce tonight was a sellout, although a couple people tweeted that while it was announced as a paid sellout, there were plenty of empty banks of seats, just like normal, and I'm sure there was a lot of empty seats when there was about 8 minutes left in the game.
Well, it is a Monday. As a off and on season ticket holder, I can tell you it didn't matter how good or bad they were doing, what the matchup was. Monday nights were usually the nights that was easiest for me to sneak into the lower. Usually had the most open seats.
Yeah, no, I hear you, but it's a case of, is it going to take a certain amount of non-sellouts to where they can't announce an actual sellout for Hasso to consider making a change, or will he just keep riding Wilson until he stops making the playoffs for maybe 2 years in a row? Maybe he gives him a mulligan after 10 years of success, or what he considers to be success, and say, okay, we'll ride it one more year. But at this point, like I've said, starting with this season, with the off season, I swear to God, it almost started with I don't know if it was the hiring of John Tortora or the firing of Drew Remenda, but it seems like ever since then you have the firing of Remenda, you have the addition of Ice Girls, you have the addition of those stupid CGI banners behind the nets, you have the season in limbo where no one's a captain, you've got all the press, all the PR stuff, all the promotional materials, none of them have your two big names on it. I mean, this Sharks team, to me, from being a fan for so long, I don't know if it's just me, but I completely feel like this team is just in limbo. Not to mention the fact that haven't they pretty much been like right up against the salary cap for about the last 5 years, and now they've got about $8 million in space, and they're doing nothing. I mean, as from what we know, we haven't seen anything, but it's pretty clear that the defensive depth is, we don't have any. I mean, you almost want to play the would you rather game, where it's like, okay, Chris, I'm going to ask you, Who would you rather have on defense? I'm saying as a defenseman now, but I'm throwing this out there. Who would you rather have, Vlasic or Irwin?
Vlasic.
Okay. So Irwin falls, Vlasic stays. Who would you rather have, Vlasic or Burns on defense?
Vlasic.
Okay, who would you rather have? Okay, so we know Vlasic's at the top of the list. So for shits and giggles, who would you rather have, Tennyson or Irwin?
Tennyson.
Okay, so you keep that up. Then
only because of the unknown. Like, we know how awful Irwin is nowadays.
Right, but my bottom line is play the would you rather game and keep doing that, where you keep matching it up and you drop the one player that you don't want, and then find out who your actual top 6 are. Get rid of the 7th and 8th ones and find new people, do something different. But where I can respect them wanting to try to do a youth movement and forward, well, you have a much bigger pool to swim in when it comes to making those changes at forward. Defense is a completely different monster, which we've seen. I mean, Burns tonight, 3 times in the box, looked lost a few times, but looked great on the breakaway. He was the one that had that good outlet pass, and obviously he's basically taken over Boyle's slot on the blue line. He's the one that needs to drive that power play, but he can do that as a forward as well. So you would essentially have 5 forwards on a power play. I don't understand how we're over halfway into the season, and I think it needs for somebody to, step up and kind of like bang on Wilson's door or McClellan. Who knows where the disconnect is, but just finally say, look, Burns at defense is not getting it done. Move him to forward and take this $7 million you have in space and find somebody.
Absolutely.
And to kind of get back to your kind of original question, because I love the passion, AJ. That's what Sports Talk Radio is all about: hot takes and passion. But to get very asked, what would it take for Wilson to get let go? I think you brought up 2 important things. One, the sellouts, but also we mentioned earlier the playoffs. I think if they either make the playoffs and have an early exit or miss the playoffs, that lack of sellouts, even if it's only by a little margin, that might be what cost him his job, because we could have a terrible season every season, and if butts are in seats, he's probably, not always true, but probably going to get a lot more leeway. But if we see a non-playoff season or an early departure, pretty easy to say that the Heat will be right on him for all those sellouts. McClellan might end up being the sacrificial lamb, but I think the lack of sellouts this season is very indicative of what fans are thinking of this whole thing. They did spend an entire offseason giving the middle finger to Sharks fans, like, Drumenda out, see ya, Ice Girls, bam, just after that, after we were fresh off getting stabbed in the heart by the Kings.
See,
they just, we were already down on the ground. They're just like, hey, we're going to kick a little sand in your eyes right here while you're on the ground writhing in pain. So
no, that is the perfect point to make, is the fact that the fans of the show, the Sharks, but the fans as well, suffered just the most. Who could just see that coming? Up 3-0, and you sit there and watch this team piss it away. All you had to do was win 1, and you piss it away, and that's the perfect point to make, Chris, is the fact that you were blinded you were snowblind at that point, and what do? Is your first big major press move, you get rid of the most beloved, whatever you want to call it, color commentator or
personality.
Sharks. That's a perfect word. Yeah, you get rid of the most popular personality that team has ever had. Like, why the hell would you do that?
And it wasn't just like this was trickled down. This all happened in one off season. And you make a good point about talking about being up 3-0. Let's be frank here. 4 years ago, we were also up 3-0 on the Detroit Red Wings, and we had to play Game 7 in San Jose. Now, granted, that Game 7 was a great Game 7. It was a fantastic game, probably one of the best Game 7s, and probably one of the best playoff series we'll probably ever see. However, the problem is that the Sharks are the only North American pro sports team to give up two 3-0 playoff deficits. Thankfully, they won one of them because. And here's another thing, guys. I'm not trying to get into what if so. If they were to lose Game 7 to Detroit in 2011, would we already be further down in the rebuilding process and have a different GM? Because I couldn't see this team being together as much as it is with blowing a lead 4 years ago, let alone 1 year ago.
Honestly,
I'm go ahead. No.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder. For me, if they would have blown it in 2011, and I think this is going to be a thing in hindsight that they end up looking at. They're going to, and we talked about it before. The whole Bill Walsh thing about jettison a player a year too soon than a year too late is they're going to look back on this and say, you know what, Thornton had 8, 9, 10 seasons. He had all of that time with Marlowe. Those two guys had a decade together. They're the leaders. It didn't happen. We should have gotten rid of those guys earlier and gotten value for them. I think at this point you've got guys that have, 2 years remaining? And at decent salaries, but 2 years remaining, but with no trade clauses. At this point, I understand they are great players, but they are great players that don't have the ability to get it done when it counts the most. They've got numbers up the wazoo, but and I'm not trying to play into that whole, it's all on them, it's all their fault, which it isn't. But you're only going to be as good as your surrounding cast. It also, clearly it has to fall on Wilson too for not getting the right people to surround him with. But I just think there comes a point where you have to say, look, we've had a lot of time with these two guys. Wilson needs to take it upon himself. I haven't been able to put the right guys around these guys. Maybe it's time to start over and at least get value for them.
I agree with you in some respects there. I think if they had really completely coughed up that thing, we probably would have seen more drastic moves. Let's talk about that offseason. The big drastic move, or there's two drastic moves made that offseason anyways, were Burns and then the Havlat for Heatley swap. So I'm guessing in this parallel universe where they blow Game 7, those may or may not happen, but I think it's a lot more likely that they try and look to ship Thornton or Marlowe. As far as can you get it done with them, I've said for years, I think the main problem is always, I think they've been, like, if you look at their production, it actually has been pretty decent in the playoffs. You just look at the raw numbers. The problem to me has always been
defense.
Defense. Well, there's two things: defense and bottom six. But bottom six even more because we're insistent on throwing out a garbage fourth line all the time. Whether it was Jody Shelley back in the day or John Scott nowadays, we are insistent of just like saying, hey, the fourth line, that's just where we kind of punt and not even care what happens. But that's those, as like the seeing the Blackhawks in both of the years they won the championship, from their first line down to their fourth line, all four lines brought the pressure. It wasn't just we have two great lines and two lines that will be physical with a F, that just like hit you a lot. They did much worse than just hitting you. They came at you, they shot and they scored, and they would be a pain in the ass.
And you would look at one primary example, and which our fourth line did last playoff year. Torres had a couple of goals. Mike Brown contributed. Desi, I thought that line was working wonders. I think that all comes back to 1995 when the Devils had their infamous crash line. that line was probably the precedence to have that fourth line that could be a hitting team or a hitting line, but could also score at the same time. You do need to have some bumpers in your league. Um,
I'm not saying you don't want to have any physicality at all. I'm saying though is the best line is one that can drive possession and make the other team defend. If you want to wear the other team out, make them defend all the time. Don't give them a break.
And see, that's the point. That's the point right there. Is I don't know how many times, when do we see it when it's the fourth line and they finally get a hold of the damn puck. They barely skate up to the neutral line, and then they just chip it down there. They essentially they punt it down there, and what ends up happening? It flips back as the Sharks are getting the line change. It comes back the other way. I remember more than a few times seeing Mark Smith, who was hustle dude, didn't have the most talent, but that guy was always hustling. He was the only Shark I'd ever seen regularly beat out icings because he was all hustle all the time, and he was one of those guys that was a fourth-line guy, but he would take the puck, or when the fourth line was on and they were trying to get a switch to the top line, he wouldn't just chip it down and peel off to the bench. He would take it all the way down to the end to try to give it to the new line coming on, to give it to them in the offensive zone, so they didn't have to go down and chase it, and take it back, which you never see that from the Sharks. You don't see that from a lot of teams, but that was like Smith's specialty, is he would just take it down low, and he would keep it there and give everybody enough time to change up.
And that's where... Oh, go ahead, Chris, sorry.
I'll say you'd see that kind of thing from the 2010 and 2013 Chicago Blackhawks. Both those had that fourth line that was just a menace, that was a pain. They didn't just dump the puck in or didn't just defend for a shift and jump on the bench. They, at the very least, they would try to keep possession alive or something. They would, that's how you put pressure on the other team. Is you gotta keep things going.
Absolutely. You have so many things, and we could go on and on and on, and we don't want to keep everybody up. Just looking really quickly on Twitter, King Shark and Bleeding Teal, they 1,000% agree. Hasso has been indifferent, would never run SAP the same way he runs the Sharks. Hasso isn't really running the Sharks. DW is, Hasso's has deferred DW to everything hockey-wise, which is probably why they brought in Tatora, just to run the business side of it all.
Hate that guy.
He signs the checks.
I don't care. I don't care.
Back to Cactus.
Also,
I don't know about
here.
I don't know that I don't know about it being a cactus. I just know Totora's a prick. That's the only thing that I can relate to him to cactus. Sorry, I had to go for the cheap shot.
Nice. Well done. So, one more quick comment here before Eric's probably going to be wrapping the episode here. But our favorite username, the Crispy Churro with the 0. If you're to fire McClellan and his staff or let go as well, who would you want as the new head coach and assistant? So I'll just real quick give my cop-out answer. My cop-out answer once again.
Scotty
Well, as I said, I would be looking for up-and-comers. Like, I don't want a retread. I don't want someone who's been fired from a few jobs. I want, because McClellan, he was a hot up-and-comer at the time the Sharks nabbed him off the Red Wings. I'd say, look at the Kings assistant coaches, look at the Blackhawks assistant coaches, look at the most successful organizations and see if we can pick someone off of their coaching staffs. That's what my answer would be. I would have to do more research to actually put out names.
And here's Eric to tell you why it should be Bylsma from Pittsburgh. Go ahead, Eric.
Oh, thanks. He's won a Stanley Cup.
He has cup experience. He knows what it takes to win a cup.
He knows what it takes to win a cup. Back to you, AJ. Boy, you threw me off when he was doing that. Oh man!
Just threw Eric under the bus there.
You know what? It would be. You know what? It would be Todd McClellan if we had Sidney Crosby.
Right. I know one person who it shouldn't be, even though they're on a 7-game winning streak,
I
because he
thought
can
you
save
I
his ass.
totally thought you were going to say Tortorella, but go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say Roy Sommer. I mean, heaven forbid.
What about Adam Oates? Adam Oates? Anyone? Bring some respect for the game.
Hold on,
He'd be sent to the minors in a heartbeat.
Yeah, who else was on the Devils bench tonight?
Stevens.
Stevens, yes. Okay.
You look like the crypt keeper, man.
Yeah.
I was like, I wish my roommate was out there. He's always the one like making fun of everyone's personal appearance on TV. I was like, oh man, this is just too easy. Come on, dude. You're asleep upstairs right now.
Oh boy.
Yeah. At this point, that is one of my biggest I don't know, pet peeves when it comes to this crap. Where it's like, fuck, man, we need a new head coach, we need a new GM, we need whatever. And it's like, well, then give me names. I want to know who you think should be that person. Now, of course, it's a lot of fun to sit there and look at LA and say, well, both the head coach and the GM down there used to be Sharks, so well, that worked out really well for us.
Curse of the ex-Sharks continues.
Yeah,
it's what we call post-Teal syndrome, folks.
Yeah. Honestly, at this point, I don't know that there is. I'm gonna end up going back to the well of Marlowe and Thornton just because they're the oldest guys, they're the leaders. I don't know that there is any coach, be it Tortorella or the polar opposite of Tortorella, whoever that might be. Pete Carroll, I don't know, would be able to get I don't know. There's something that this team just has no chemistry, and I'm not putting that on Thornton or Marlowe. Those two seem to be fine together, but I don't know who you could get to coach this team. I mean, you went with the hard ass and Daryl Sutter, the guy who would put talented guys like Corky in the doghouse because they weren't, Corky wasn't a grinder enough. He wasn't Mike Ricci enough or whatever. He wanted badasses. And then you saw Ron Wilson take it the polar opposite way, and he wanted finesse guys like Corky and Solani and those type of players, and trying to make them gel with somebody like Damphus or Nolan or what have you. But we all know that Sutter was a Ricci, Owen Nolan kind of guy. Wilson was a Solani, Corky kind of guy, and McClellan has kind of been in the middle, which I think is probably what you need. But maybe you just need a guy that finds a way to challenge the higher ups, the leaderships. I mean, clearly, if it doesn't happen this season, going into next season, if Pavelski is not the captain of this team, and regardless of who's on it, then something ain't right in Denmark.
I mean, you pretty much said it all. But this is where I say, AJ. So you want a hard ass? Would you want Tortorella to be here on this team?
No, because
that's the one hard ass that I know offhand for sure that's out in the market right now.
Yeah, no, Tortorella. No, he is not the hard ass that I want, because I think he's like the God. There was somebody who made a line about this. I can't remember who, but to me, he's the anti-talent. He can take talent and ruin it. I understand his job is to try to get under guys' skin and try to challenge it. He's one of those guys that just goes about it the completely wrong way. If anything, Tortorella at this point should change his career path to being a motivational speaker in parts of Russia. That would, I think,
he could go with Mike Singletary there. To finish your thought on Thornton and Marlowe, I mean, they're kind of getting to the point where they're about to age out anyways.
Exactly.
I don't know. I mean, I don't really care who's the captain next season as much as just name a captain. No more of these stupid games.
It's
one. Name somebody. Name John Scott captain for all I care.
It's just one more distraction that you don't need in a summer of a nightmare. And here we are. We're in the middle of January, and we're still talking about a nightmare summer. and that's pretty bad.
Yep.
Kind of to wrap it up, do you guys have any extra final thoughts before I wrap this puppy up?
I think I'm good.
Well, like I said, I'm interested to see who. We have the game on Wednesday. It's Metallica night, yeah! And I, in fact, will be there. If you want to have a beer beforehand, I'll probably be at ISO Beers at about 5 or so.
And I'll probably be there with him.
There you go. We might have log on for a quick 15-minute Pucknology drunk as fuck. But anyway,
I'll be passing one of these bad boys over to AJ.
there you go.
The #1 rated beer in the world.
Hey now. So anyway, we have LA on, it is a pet peeve of mine too. I don't wear a number, I don't skate. But the Sharks have LA coming to town. Will the Sharks have some balls and start Stalock for a second game? See what else they can get from him. Challenge the defense. Clearly, sit Hannon. Consider sitting Irwin. Bring up Tennyson. Definitely bring Tennyson back. For the love of God, bring up Fadoon and take a look at him, for Christ's sakes. And what the hell's going? Give us an update on Mueller. Like, what the hell? It's like they shipped him off for the juniors thing or that Swedish, whatever the hell it was during the holiday break, and we haven't heard shit about it since. So.
Right. You're likely going to see, unless Mueller's seriously hurt, which I can't see a possibility happening, you're likely going to see him Wednesday because Braun is going to be out for a while. The tweet put out not even 10 minutes ago, McClellan, we've lost Braun. He's got an injury. He'll be out for a while, and so will Tommy Wingles. Unquote.
Okay,
Which means you're going to need to call up. It's going to be like Terry Doherty, Taylor Fadoon.
It won't be Doherty. It won't be Doherty.
You have to bring up somebody.
Fadoon.
So, I mean, it's likely going to be Fadoon.
Well, wait a minute. Isn't Mueller on the IR right now?
Mueller's on the IR, so you'd swap him out, but you also want to have that extra help. We'll see.
Now, who goes in Wingle's spot?
That's where
they scratched Goodrow tonight, so he'll probably be back in.
Right, and you might bring up Freddie Hamilton or Chris Tierney just to play it safe.
I'd like to get a look at Tierney. I hear he's been tearing it up a little bit over the last 7 games.
He has. He's played very well, including I think he got the game winner this past weekend, one of the games that Worcester played. So with that, we'll bring it to a close. Sharks lose 5-2 to the New Jersey Devils. Quickly go over the other scores. Calgary beat LA 2-1 in overtime. Columbus beat Minnesota 3-1, as Minnesota's just falling apart at the seams right now. St. Louis beat Colorado 3-1. Vancouver beat Florida in Sunrise in front of invisible people 2-1. Toronto lost. I think they had the record 3 jerseys land on the ice tonight.
Yep.
Islanders 7, Flyers 4. The Flyers are not doing too well either. Detroit beat Buffalo 6-4. Or that was last night. My bad. Darn you, NHL.com. So that'll bring that to a close. The Sharks currently, right now, are sitting in the number 3 spot in the Pacific Division with 54 points, clinging on to one of the guaranteed spots. If the season ended today, they would be taking on the Vancouver Canucks, which, if you were to tell me that last year, we'd be totally down with. But because Ryan Miller is in our heads right now, you are probably going to send it to at least 6 games if that stays the case.
With regards to Florida tonight, I believe they announced 9,700 people in attendance tonight, but that's only because they counted them twice.
Oh, jeez. Like AJ said, I don't know. Like AJ said, Wednesday night's a big night. It's Metallica night at the Shark Tank. It is Wednesday night rivalry, the night you love to hate.
For fuck's sakes, is that going to be an NBC game again?
It is an NBCSN game. However, Randy and Biggs will be calling the game. So you're going to have that. It's January 21st. That's when it'll be happening, and that's going to be the big one because it's the last game before the All-Star break. So they have to put on a good show for it, right, guys? It is your biggest rival, and it'll be exactly 1 month before the Stadium Series game at Levi's Stadium. We will have 95% guarantee of all your Sharks tweet up info that night. I've been trying like crazy to figure out where to have it, and looks like we know where to go. So with that, we'll bring it to a close for AJ Strong.
I was going to say something now. I forgot.
Think of it while I say goodbye to Chris JWS.
See everyone.
I got it. Okay, I'm sorry. I remember. Let me just ask you this. Let me just ask you this really fast. Do we know who the coaches are for the All-Star game?
I believe it's Laviolette and Sutter.
Okay.
The best winning percentage coach against the Stanley Cup champion. I think that's what they go with now.
Okay. Wouldn't it be the all-time best troll ever if Sutter starts Burns at forward in the All-Star game? Wouldn't that be the best troll ever?
Oh, I would just love that.
Dude,
but let's not get too far off track here.
Right.
That would be fantastic, though.
Oh, that would be. Oh, wow. So with that, for AJ Strong, for Chris JWS, I'm Eric Kura, PuckGuy14 on Twitter. Oh, forgot to mention the jersey I'm wearing tonight. The good old Oakland Skates of Roller Hockey International. The team played from 93 to 96. Didn't do much, but neither did the league. With that, we bid you a good night. Keep it real. Keep it fresh. Keep it real fresh. Good night, everyone.
Peace the puck out.